Welcome inside the College Football Live studios with Ed Cunningham, Chris Low, and Brett McMurphy. I'm Zubin Mehenti. Can Florida State go back-to-back? If they can't, well, we'll have a new national champion. If they can, they'll certainly have some obstacles to overcome. Brett, you're saying the biggest obstacle might not be anybody on their schedule. It might be something inside their heads.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Florida State themselves. Complacency, how do they fight that? How do they avoid falling into that trap that a lot of defending champions have gotten into? Also, last year's the first year under Jimbo Fisher that they didn't suffer a big double-digit loss. The 3 previous years before, they lost 4 games as double-digit favorites to ACC opponents. Can that happen this year? Perhaps Clemson. They go at Louisville on a Thursday night. They go at Miami. Certainly they're going to be favored to win those games. They did it last year. The previous 3 years, they weren't so fortunate.
I think for me, if being in the head is a big deal, but last year being around this team a lot, I covered them, I think, about 3 times. Jimbo Fisher talked about the chemistry in that locker room all the time and how they'd been focused from day one of spring practice. Well, you lose Timmy Jernigan, who was the only defensive lineman who played basically every snap last year, and LaMarcus Joyner, who was a gnat on defense. He was everywhere for them and also a leader in the locker room. And the big loss to me was Jeremy Pruitt, the defensive coordinator. That was a huge shock when he leaves and goes to Georgia. So I think the schedule stuff out of conference, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, Florida, I don't think they're going to have the same chemistry on defense. I think it's a long shot for them to repeat because of a couple of issues, Chris.
Well, and I think when you got a great player like Jameis Winston, Jameis was a little bit of not a surprise, but you knew going into last season he was a guy who could do big things. But now do you stand around and watch him too much? Do guys sort of expect him when the game's on the line, critical situations, hey, Jameis is going to get it done? I think that's the danger when you have a guy like that who's coming back from a Heisman Trophy winning season.
Interesting.
You know, one thing I think in studying Jameis last year, he's not a very athletic guy. He's not the fastest guy on the field. He doesn't make people miss a lot. Remember, Jacob Coker's gone to Alabama. If you make Jameis Winston move around and he runs, there were a lot of times last year we did games where he took hits that if it's a real top defense they're playing, he may have been hurt. And so now without a backup and a guy who's not the most athletic and fastest guy at quarterback, if people can get some pressure on him, get him in the open field, they may get some shots on him too.
I mean, obviously any off-the-field issues, if that becomes an issue, a distraction down the road, and also like you said, if he gets hurt, who do they turn to behind him? That could be huge Achilles heels for Florida State.
Yeah, Jacob Coker is on his way to Alabama. He was sitting behind Winston a year ago. They're not going to have that luxury this time around. We'll see you next time.